Hello everyone, welcome to JS Gigs and my name is Deepak. Here in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about adding the PWA using the ng-add command from your Angular CLI. And then we will also deep dive into what are the files that gets created when you run such command in your Angular application, right? So before that, before we run and add the PWA support from the Angular CLI in our already running Angular application, it's important for us to save and commit the data that we already have. So here's the list of files that we already have available that we had been changing and added in our application, and it's time for us to commit it. The reason why I'm asking you to commit all of these changes, or rather why am I committing all of these changes, is to basically give you a gist of how many new files would be created when we run the ng-add command for PWA support in our application. So before we run and try to understand that, let's just quickly commit this. So I'll write down the commit message as you can see that the application has been published in my GitHub account. So let me just wait for a quick minute and then we'll see how things work. Yep. So I can see on my GitHub account that this particular application has been added, and then the repository has already been created and it's public by default. So let me quickly run the command to see. Yep, I can see that the GitHub has been created and it's available at this particular address, right? So that's pretty much good. Let's just close this up now. And let me open another session, right? So let's just close this bit here. And this is you put a clear. Okay. So in order to run and in order to have the command for service worker, right? So we really need to run a particular command, right? We need to run that command. And in order to run that command, we firstly have to go to the Chrome browser and have a look at the documentation, what it has to tell you about the command particularly, right? So let's just quickly go to the Chrome browser, and here on the Chrome browser you can see that it's a getting started with service worker page available on your screen. So it essentially tells me first to run this particular command, which is ng-add Angular PWA, and then it will tell me to do all of this thing, right? So now we have committed all the changes, and now we're going to be running this particular command that we have already copied now. And let me quickly go back to VS Code and try running this command. Please note now that there is nothing uncommitted here in my VS Code, and it's going to be taking a little while to basically add all this file and change all the file and put all the changes up here. And that's when we will try to monitor and deep dive one after the other. So this is good so far. Let's just run this for a moment and then I'll resume the video once this completes. All right, so now you can see that the application has run the command successfully, and you can see that some of the 7 number of files in total have been created here, or rather changed. So let's look at each one of this in detail and then we'll see. So let's just open angular.json first, which comes first here, right? So as you can see here, the assets I have added, the Angular CLI command has added src/manifest.webmanifest, right? That's the first change. So now if we go down and try to see the other changes, you would notice that the same manifest has been added in the build. Here in the configurations, it has added service worker, which is ng-sw-config.json. And then we will see these files and what are the functions exactly a little while later, but just see that how many things and files it has changed. Right? So now further going down, you would notice that again here at the test as well, it has added the src manifest.webmanifest. If you guys have difficulty understanding what Angular JSON is all about, I would absolutely request you to please go back to my channel and look at the video the demo and the file walkthrough video that I've created for the Angular application. It'll give you a quick gist of what each and every one of these files is all about and what are these architect build and what are the important aspect that you really need to be careful about when you do the Angular development, especially in angular.json file, right? So all of these details are given there, and I'll provide the link of that particular video in the description section below, and please go through that if you find it difficult. But I'm not just going to be deep diving into those particular stuff. I'm just going to be focusing on the PWA part in this tutorial, right? So now you can see that essentially it has made 3 entries. As you can see, the 3 changes highlighted here at the rightmost corner, which tells you, these are the Git changes. So the first one is the manifest file. The other one is the ngsw-config.json file. The other one is also a web manifest file, but then just added in the test, right? So let's just close this. Now let's just look at the ngsw-config.json. So it wasn't really available earlier. It's the new file which got created when you ran the command for ng add PWA support. So now you can see that this has been this comes as U. So U meaning untracked. Untracked essentially means that it is a new file. It wasn't really available in the GitHub earlier, and that's why it came back as U. When you say M essentially means modified, which means the Angular file, this particular file was already available. It's just that there are some more changes being done on that file, and that's why it's been listed here at the as a change over here, essentially as a modified, right? So here the ngsw-config.json, you would notice that it was an untracked file, and if you notice closely, you would see that it has assets group. Under assets group, it has a name as app and also name as assets. And the app, if you notice that it is basically in storing all the app related files, and if you look at the assets, it's essentially storing all your assets, which includes the PNG, JPEG, Webpack, the WAV file or the font files and everything other, every other file that are basically listed here in the assets folder. So that's what ngsw-config.json has been keeping in it, right? So now we have covered about 2 changes, AngularJSON and ngsw-config.json. Let's just look at the package log. Package log essentially would tell you that what are the new library and new entries it has essentially made. So if you look at this, it has added Angular service worker dependency. So this Angular service worker dependency essentially the dependency which would require you to run the Angular service worker. Yes, you may also notice that the peer dependency here as well. There are a couple of changes which are being made in package-log.json. Let's just keep this in mind. And now quickly look at the package.json. Package.json obviously will have a change because we have run the ng add command. So that ng add command essentially translated into adding a service worker file, which is over here. It's a dependency, and also notice that it's a dependency. It's not a dev dependency. Right, and then if you, again, as I said earlier, if you have difficulty understanding all of these, I have a very good and a detailed video available on my web channel, on my YouTube channel, and please go back and look at that video, and you would be very happy to know what these dependencies and everything else is all about, right? So please go back and see. If you're comfortable, please follow along. So that was all about package.json, and now look at the index.html file. So here in the index.html file, you would notice that it has really created a link which includes a manifest file. Please note this here. And also note that this manifest file is absolutely important. And why it is important, we would see that in the future video and tutorials. But I'll quickly give you a gist of things. So web manifest file essentially holds all the let me open the web manifest file because it's right here, right? So if you notice here, it gives you it holds the icon, right? And you can see that all of these icons are available here. And then it has some of the properties available, such as name, short name, theme color, and so on and so forth, right? So, but if you look at the icon part, which is the most important bit, although other bits are important as well, but then this is the thing that we would be seeing or visually seeing immediately we do the installation of PWA in our cell phones or in our desktop app. So if you notice here, it says that sizes, which is a 72 into 72. Now look at this as well. It says sizes. Now look at this, the next line over here, which is 128, 128. So similarly, it has sizes up till 1212, 212. So 212, 212 pixel, right? To height and width. So these icons, and if you also notice that in the SRC, we have given a list of icons, right? So icon 72, 72, 96, 96, 128, 128, and so on and so forth. So what are these essentially? These are the icons that you would see when you create an installer on your desktop or on your cell phone, be it Android or be it iPhone. Let's just take a moment to and then let this sink in, right? So that's why this particular file is very important, and all these sizes we really need to keep it. And tool which is available in the browser by default, particularly in the Chrome, and that's called the Lighthouse report. If you run the Lighthouse report, it tells you, what are the other good practices that you need to follow when you write the PWA, and it has also a section which tells you that the icons for these icons for a smaller device and a larger devices are missing, or if you don't write these, then that's the kind of message you would receive. But then that will come to later. But just understand that it has different sizes and different icons available. And if you look at these icons are available under assets icon. So let me quickly go here and see if it is really there. So now you can see that the assets, and under that is there you have an icon, and you look at all these files are available already. Let's just click on those. I hope that the preview is available. Now you can see this. There is a preview available. There's an Angular icon, which is 72 into 72 pixel. Same with 96 into 96. And as you keep moving forward, it'll start getting bigger. So essentially, the idea behind keeping such icons is that you can obviously define your own icons as well. Let's say, for an example, you want to you have your own logo available, right? So you can write down all of your logo. Like in my case, I have JS Gigs logo available with the dark and the light theme. So you could actually modify this and then put it over here. And then the same icon link you would have to define in the web manifest file, which is here. And then once you define it, you will have your icon available on desktop and mobile phone application whenever you install that PWA in those respective devices. Right. So this is about web manifest. Now quickly go back to index.html. We've only spoken about web manifest, and then we have not really spoken about other things. So here you could notice that it also tells you the theme color, which is 1976D2. It's a hash color. You can very well go back and change. The idea behind keeping such color is that you may have noticed that whenever you start an application, whenever you start a mobile phone application, you would notice that when application launches, it shows certain color in the background, right? Mostly it is white, and sometimes it is a theme color. So here, the idea of keeping this particular meta theme color is that whatever is your theme color, you must define it here. So if somebody is trying to open your application from the installed devices, let that be iOS, Android, or web desktop. So the moment you click on it, the initial color in the background would be, or the theme color of shown while launching that particular application would be #1976D2, right? So that's why it is very important. NoScript, I believe that you all know about NoScript. In case if JavaScript is not available in the web browser, it's not available for execution. This is the message that you would receive in your application. So this essentially is the thing that we have changed. Right now, let's go to the next file, which is appconfig.ts. Now, if you look closely here in appconfig.ts, I have made another change, right, by running this particular command. So what are this change? So if you look here, it has imported a provided service worker, and provide service worker is basically putting the ngsw-worker.js, and then it has some of the flags available, which is enabled and registration strategy, register when stable, and 3000 is a timeout thing. Right. So if it is only going to be enabling when it is not a dev mode. So if you hover over it, you would notice that what Angular has written in the types file for is dev mode. So it says that returns whether Angular is in development mode. By default, this is true unless enable prod mode is invoked prior to calling this method, or any other application is built using the Angular CLI with this optimization option, right? So the idea behind keeping such thing is to basically optimize your application bundle and optimize your application rendering, right? So sometimes it happens that as a developer, you would want to do certain things only when it is a developer mode, and you would probably want to enable the console log or log, or want to write the username and maybe printing or making an API call. This is the one that you can basically make use of. Earlier, when this is dev mode was not available in Angular CLI or in the Angular framework, we used to write custom logic in order to determine if this particular running application is running in a dev mode or not, right? So these are the 7 files that it has changed. 2 files added, which is web manifest and ngsw-config.json. Also, if you notice here in the app config, we are making a call for ngswworker.js, and this ngswworker.js does not really have any link over here, right? So if you notice closely, this ng-sw-worker is not created. It's only the JSON files and one index.html file and a TS file. There is no other JS file which gets created, right? So in case of provided service worker, where this gets created and how does it work, we will see that in a little while. But before that, just try to understand that these are the 7 files which get created and 2 new files added when you ran the ng add PWA support for this particular application, right? So now I think we can close this particular terminal. We have added it already. So far so good. Okay. So now let me close each and every one of these files, and yep, we're good so far. Now let's just go to the Chrome browser and see that what Angular documentation has to say about the PWA and what next can be done. If you look closely over here, we have already explained what service worker and other things are there, and we have already seen how many files are added. Now the next thing it tells us to do is basically to run ng build, right? So let me take you to my code, or rather the VS code once again. And if you notice here, there is no dist folder available. So let me open another CLI over here, and let me just quickly do a build ng, or rather npm run build. I just wait for a quick minute and then it'll start building the application, and it'll create a dist folder. Inside that, there are certain files it'll create, and we will go through these files and why they are important. So the question that we are keeping still in our head is about ng-sw-worker.js, because we did not see any of that file getting generated over here. So we'll see that when the dist folder generated, how that file works and where does that really go, right? So I'll pause the video for a moment and I'll resume the video once the build completes. Okay, so now you can see that the build command has been run, and it has already created a dist folder. So now let's just quickly get inside the dist folder, and we'll see that it has some of the browser and assets. All these assets are already available here. And then now just look at how many files it has. So first one is favicon.ico, which is the favorite icon that you can see on the browser when you run it. And then index.html, main, and then in a hashcode.js web manifest file in which it has icons and other details for a PWA. Now look at this particular file, which is ng-sw-worker.js. Now look closely and take a moment to understand why it is so. So if you see, this ng-sw-worker.js was not really generated when we ran the command for adding a PWA. You would notice that it was generated after we ran the command to build an application inside the browser folder, right? Just think about it again. So inside the browser folder, but not otherwise. So what it essentially means is that ng-sw-worker file, by logic, it must have certain details which are taken in from these config files and the other settings that we have done for PWA in this particular application. And once those settings are done, that's when the ng-sw-worker.js gets created, and it summarizes all the service worker related activities that needs to have. So if you look closely, it is roughly about 1500 or 1600 lines of code. Oh, it's pretty much more than that. So let's just go to the down, and yep, it's roughly about 1864 lines of code. It's just a basic plain ng-sw-worker.js. We will see that how this works and what are the code which is written in it. We'll try to see that in a while. But just understand this, ng-sw-worker.js is not the file which gets created when you add the PWA. When you add the PWA support for an Angular application, it gets created when you do a build inside the dist folder, right? It's not outside it, right? So that's pretty much it about it. Then that's all about ng-sw-worker.js. If you look closely, there is another JSON file which is ng-sw.json, which is Angular service worker.json. It provides the details pertaining to that service worker, the things that it needs. And if you look closely over here, it has navigation URLs, it has the assets, it has two particular block object over here. The one is the app, the other one is the assets. and then app and asset. Inside the assets, it has all the assets that it needs to keep inside it. So if you notice here that we had jsdark.png, jslight.png, both these files are added over here, and along with that, all the icons which are required for your PWA to work, right? So we are sorted over here. There's another thing that we need to note is the hash table. Now look closely, this particular hash table. It has some details over here, which is the key, and it has a hash code generated over here. Similarly, for all these assets, if you look closely, for each of these individual assets, there is particular hash available, right? Just see. And this hash is not reported, is not repeated. It's basically unique for all of these PNG files and JS files and HTML file and web manifest and .css files. At the same time, you also have this v3x3 2pz0, particularly for this CSS file. It is basically going to be different every time you generate, every time you change anything in your PWA and try to do the build. You would notice that this particular hash would change for each of the build, right? So we'll come to that, why it is important and why it is important to keep this hash table thing in our head, that I'll explain a little while later, but just understand that this is how it is done. So for all the assets, essentially the idea is for all the assets and all the JS file, there is a particular hash available inside the ngsw.json, right? And we will see that how it is used and what's the usage of it, right? So now look closely. The next bit is navigation URL. So it will say that, what are the navigation URL, navigation request strategy, performance, right? So that's all about this. Now this is a polyfill file. I'm pretty sure that you all are aware about what polyfill file is all about. And then if you look at the safety-worker.js, this safety-worker.js file was also not generated when you generated or when you added the PWA support for your application. If you look closely, this is the file which just has some of the details. It says self.add event listener, self.add event listener, and then wait until, and then some of the codes are written over here. I'll come to that, how it works when I start explaining about each of this bit. But just understand that the safety worker.js is also generated when you do a build command in your PWA app, right? Now this is a style file. Style file, I'm pretty much sure that everyone would be aware that this style file is a single file which gets created after combining all the files which are defined inside the component and inside the main.styles.scss and everything else, and it compiles down to .css file, right? Similarly, worker-basic.min.js, this is a minimum service worker support which is required to run the service worker in your application. So you can close everything down over here. All right, so we have now covered all the files which gets created when you do a build command and also when you add the PWA support in your Angular application. And we have seen what Angular, what are the changes that are done in Angular JSON, package JSON, ngs-config JSON, and everything else. So there are in total 7 changes. And also we had noticed that when you do a build command, there are certain other files gets created, which is basically the service worker file and the basic support and whatnot. Right. So by that, I want to end this episode here, and I think we have just covered all the basic files which gets created. We will deep dive into things a little while later. We will deep dive into things probably in just another. We'll deep dive into things in the next episode. This episode, I'm just trying to focus on the files that gets created and things around it, right? So by now, I think I'm pretty sure that you would all understand that, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would want to end this episode here, and I'll see you in the next one, wherein I would explain about what ngsw-config.json file is all about and how it really changes your service worker file and behavior. And we will also see, after adding this file and after building the application, how we run our application in the browser, and a lot many other things to come along with it, right? So thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in. And if you're liking my work, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also hit the bell icon in order to be notified whenever I post a next video on any other exciting technology. So thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen, once again. And I'm absolutely delighted to host this series for you. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon on my channel. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much once again.